So we are here to discuss and debate this topic. Every municipality should ban the circulation of private vehicles in at least 30% of its urban areas. So now we can start the debate, and the floor is of the first speaker of the proposition.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1, now. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, honorable judges, fellow colleagues from the opposition team, and dear coaches and spectators. Today we are here to debate the motion. This House believes every municipality should ban the circulation of private vehicles on at least 30% of its urban areas. And today we, as a proposition team, will prove you that this is necessary. And do you think that, taking into account the situation of our cities, our towns today, that it is sustainable? It is undeniable that there is an environmental crisis going on now. And the last few years, the level of pollution in our world has been getting worse and worse. And this is due to the fact that it is undeniable that is even due to the fact that there are too many private vehicles, and we are getting close to a point of no return. Urban areas contribute significantly to these pollutions, in fact, as the concentration of pollution is related to the means of transportation in this area. Before starting with our team line and our arguments, I want to define some key terms essential for this debate. The first one is municipality. Municipality is a town, a city, or a district with its own local government. When we say ban, we mean that the circulation of private vehicles should be officially declared as not allowed through a law. When we talk about private vehicles, we talk about means of transportation that are private property. And we talk about urban areas, we're talking about areas where there are a lot of people in a town or city, and for example, the city center. Now I want to propose our model for today. In fact, we want to ban the circulation of private vehicles at the 30% of the municipalities' urban areas, as with a time span of a year for the assessment and to ensure its effectiveness, and also, as it is going on in many municipalities right now, such as our own, you would have to present a request to the municipality in order to get a special permission according to your own necessities. An example is the disabilities, or if you live in that specific area. So the limitation of this area would be done by a team of experts, including all the stakeholders, that would work together according to the characteristics of the municipality and the territory. On a general level, these areas would be town center and historical areas, but it would be according to the needs of the specific territory, so they can decide. Now I want to present our team line. So to prove our idea today, we got 3 arguments. The first one is related to the environmental impact of these private vehicles. The second to the safety of the citizens, and the third one is related to the impact of this motion on all citizens. Moving into my first substantive, it is undeniable that the situation of our planet is at risk. So we are living in a dramatic situation, and if we don't take action, we could be in no time be in a situation where there is no return. And this is why we need to ban the circulation of private vehicles in at least the 30% of every municipality. No, thank you. We all know it is not the only thing that we need to do to take action, but it is a step to move towards a better future. In fact, vehicles are one of the main producers of air pollution. In fact, in the US in 2021, the private vehicles have produced 26,533 tons of monoxide. And carbon monoxide is a contributor of the global warming. This solution could also help to reach the Agenda 2030 goals and provide a better future in which we are not living in an environmental crisis. Maybe it's not the only way we can provide a better future, but it is something we can do. Private vehicles also implement and spread PM 2.5, and we are talking about particulate matter that are extremely small particles of the dimension of 2.5 microns that are merely produced by vehicles' exhaust.
POI?
Yeah?
Are you aware that even if we eliminate the circulation of private vehicles, also public vehicles have this problem?
Yes, but you can't eliminate the public transportation because people need to move, and it is also a step towards a better future. We are not, we live in a realistic world where people need to move, so this could reduce our impact on the planet. So, continuing with our argument, an example of this can be in Turin. In fact, the particulate matter was a big concern in our city, and they already started to do something about it. For example, they banned old car models such as Euro 4 and alternate traffic based on license plate numbers. And this is not enough, but it is, so we need this new solution that we are proposing today. Now I'm gonna explain our second argument about safety. Listening to the news, we often hear about car accidents. They are mainly caused by private vehicles, by people that, even if tired or drunk, decides to take the car and drive, putting at risk their safety and even the one of the other people.
POI?
No, thank you. An example of this can be when a few months ago in our city, Turin, a girl died killed by a car when she was crossing the street to go to school. This sad example clearly shows that private vehicles are really dangerous for people's security. So we are aware that these accidents can happen even out of the urban areas, but due to the bigger number of pedestrians, it is more. They can happen more in these areas. Whereas public transport drivers doing it as a job have more specific rules and a more specific kind of driver license. In fact, it is impossible to find a bus driver that is drunk at work, whereas people taking the car and causing fatal crashes happens in the US and 12% of the time. So, for all these reasons, for the example we brought you, for the real example we brought you, we need to ban the circulation of private vehicles in urban areas, at least of 30%, and to reduce our impact on the planet and ensure more safety for citizens. For all these reasons, we beg you to vote for us. Thank you.
For your speech.
8 minutes and 3 seconds.
Thank you for your speech again. Now it's the turn of the opposition team, so the floor is of the first speaker.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, both judges and members of the opposition side. I'm Gabriele, I'm the first speaker of the opposition side. Today I'm here to explain why we firmly stand against the motion that reads, this House believes that every municipality should ban the circulation of private vehicles in at least 30% of its urban areas. Now, before I begin to explain to you our team line, I have to confuse some of your arguments explained by the first speaker. Now, you talked in your first argument about environmental crisis where 26,000% more CO2 is released, but at the same time you plan of extending public transports because less public vehicles would result in an extent of those public transport. This actually links to your, no thanks, this will actually relate to your second point, safety, where you talk about incidents with drunk drivers. But I have to ask, are you aware of the fact that even bicycles are to be considered private vehicles? How do you explain drunk drivers in incidents with bicycles? And even more, most incidents happen outside of the urban area and happen between cars. Now, you can deny the fact that bicycles are to be considered private vehicles. Now, as we all know, we live in an interconnected world, locally and globally. Yes, thanks?
Are you aware that public transports are more environmentally friendly than cars?
Yes, but eliminating 30% of private vehicles in an urban area would result in an extent, as I already said, of public transportation. Because think about it, how can you go to see your friends? How can you go to the mall if the 30% of the urban area cannot have private vehicles in it? And think about it. You most of the time you can walk there. It's impossible. Friends can live outside the urban area, but you just can't get there. Now, as I was saying, we see that the world is interconnected on an everyday basis. As I already stated, we see when we go to see friends, we go to school, even when we go to work, some of us. Now, but we have to take some sort of private vehicle. As for the motion, banning at least 30% of those private vehicles, which is an enormous number, because when you think about it, it is just... Yes, thanks?
Are you aware that we are talking not to ban the 30% of the private vehicles, but to ban private vehicles from the 30% of the urban areas?
Yes, I'm aware of that, and thank you for explaining that, because I was actually getting to it. And wherever you see it is problematic. If you block the 30% of the world outside the city, even if we don't talk about an urban area, you would result in isolation from the part of both the people who live there. And now, as for your request of permission, now that I remember, you asked for a team of people that should give permission to someone to use their private vehicle. But it's just not possible. As I already said, wherever you live, it is impossible to move out of your zone, wherever you live, wherever you say, wherever you want to go. Now, and getting back to where what I was stating, and if you got the center of the urban area,
do you know that these permissions are already happening right now and they are working?
Yes, but how can you ensure that that won't result in any more pollution? That's one of your points. You plan to stay with public transportation, and therefore you result in an extent of those. And if you plan of giving permission to someone to use their private vehicle, how can you say that that will reduce pollution? Now, as I was saying, blocking the center part of the urban area would result in less tourism and a problem for workers. How can I get to work? And especially when we talk about school. And even more, we plan on... I want to take into consideration parents and their sons. How can you ensure that their children can get to school without public vehicles? You would... Yes.
You talked about without public vehicles, but here we're talking about private ones.
Yes, but as I've already stated, even bicycles are to be considered public private vehicles. Now, and also we talk about public transportation now, and reducing the extent of which private vehicles can be used would result in, especially for people who come from outside those urban areas, to take an extent of your where you want to go for your street, and would result in pollution, which you plan on reducing. Now, allow me to present our team line. And as the first argument, the one I'll be talking to briefly, is the impossibility of an efficient and happy line under the ban. As for the second argument, which will be taken into consideration by our second speaker, common workers and inability to take public transport, and as for the third argument, revisitation of the public infrastructures and consequences. Now, we think that banning at least 30% of private vehicles in an urban area would result in a drastic change in our lives and the world we live in. Now, as I've already said many times before, you can't even go to your friend's house. You can't go to school, because most of the time those are in urban area. Now, most of the people can walk there, but not everybody. You would reduce in those problems, and if you take public transportation, that would not only result in more pollution, which you plan to ban, but also in more taxes, because more public transportation equals more money spent both on gas and those no thanks. Now, this would impact both the economical context, as I was saying, because it would result in more taxes for both infrastructures, because you have to put your car in some place if you can't go into the urban area, and both for the buses, for public transportation. Now, allow me to ask you a question. Getting back to what I just said, what about your free time? And we talk about workers. They don't work all week. And what about their free time? How can you move around the city? Those people work all week. How can you deny their free time? Now, and this will also result, as it will be explained by our next speaker, in an impossibility of liberty on own transport, which will feel oppressing, don't you think? Now, getting back to what I just said and linking back our arguments, and allow me to explain our teamline once more. The impossibility of an efficient and happy life under the ban, common workers and inability to take public transportation, and revisitation of public infrastructures. Now, this would result, as I already said, in both an extent, most probably, of public transportation, which will result in more pollution, which you plan on reducing, and also more taxes, because more infrastructure and more public transportation, which will be what most likely will happen, would result in more money paid by the public, the ones that plan on reducing environmental crisis, as for one of your arguments. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech. I welcome the second speaker of the proposition team. Now the floor is yours.
Okay, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1, go. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and dear judges. I'm the second speaker for the proposition team, and I'm here today to present you our third argument, which is the impact on all citizens that this ban would have. But before moving to my argument, I'd like to rebut some things that the opposition team has explained to us today, because the first thing that it is absolutely not true, and this is really important, you have to focus on this, is the fact that with public transportation we would pollute more. No. This is completely false. Why? I'll explain this to you with a very simple example. If 20 people are on the bus and take the bus, they would produce one emission, because they are on the same bus. But if these 20 people that are on the bus, they're going with their own car, that means that each car would pollute for each car. So this is a clear example of how that reasoning does not have sense. So do not focus on that. Second of all, they also talked about bicycles. It was really confusing the way they addressed bicycles, because they first said that they are private, then they said they are public transportation. But yes, we are well aware that bicycles are private transportations. But what we're talking about is that bicycles are dangerous when we talk about areas where are very crowded, where there are many people. In fact, it happens so many times that there were very dangerous and also deadly accidents of people on bike that died because they fell off the bike, or people that were on the bike lost control and hit pedestrians. So this is also really important because we are well aware that bicycles are private, and therefore we firmly believe that in some areas where there are many people, they should be banned, as we explained before. Also, one of their argument was isolation, and I'm not aware, we're not very aware if they know what public transportation is, dear judges, because we all know that public transportation means that there are subways, pullmans, trams, trains, buses. So there are various types of transport of means of transportation. And how can this produce isolation if there are various wide range of choice and the citizens can easily get access to this transportation? So their point about isolation does not have sense, and it is not true at all. Yes, I'll take it.
How are you talking about not having not being isolated, where there are some cities where you don't even have metro or trams or stuff like that?
Well, in the smallest cities, we obviously have buses in every town center, and of course we are talking about percentage. So the 30% of the percentage of a big city is something, whereas the 30% of in a small town is totally different. So you have to pay attention to that. Now I'd like to move to my argument, which is, I repeat, the impact that this ban will have on all citizens. Why is this important? Dear judges, it is really important because what we are talking about is banning the circulation of private vehicles in at least 30% of urban areas. So why is it important to talk about the impact that this would have on all citizens? Simply because they would be the people that would get affected by this proposal. And I'm here today to prove you that with this ban, citizens would get many more benefits than opposition is taking in consideration. Because I'm gonna prove to you with 3 main points why they have a lot of benefits on citizens. First of all, I'm going to prove it with the fact that it would promote and improve health. Second of all, it would improve citizens' life by reducing traffic jams. And thirdly, it would preserve historical centers. So let's start with the first one that I repeat is promoting and improve health. So why is it important? Obviously, because the health of citizens is probably the main aim of the cities, of the people. And first of all, the banning of private vehicles would motivate the citizens to walk more and to be more productive, which is very important because many citizens they use their own car to drive everywhere, even if it's a short drive. So it is really important this because it would boost their productivity and it would improve their health, and it would also increment sociability and a sense of community in the city. So this is an important impact, but there's another one that is way much more important, and it is the health of the citizens when we talk about air quality. Because as we explained before, the air quality, the cars and the emissions that the cars produce has a very huge impact on air quality, which is polluted by the emissions of CO2. And one of the main producers of the CO2 is that our vehicles. So our idea is to reduce the emissions of CO2 because we want to improve citizens' health. In fact, when we talk about air quality, the bad air quality has a terrible impact on citizens' health because it causes many illnesses. Because particulate matters, they cause cancer to the skin and heart and lungs disease. And in fact, World Health Organization said that 4.2 million deaths are caused by air pollution, and this is outrageous because it is a very important data because it clearly explains to you why it's important to reduce the emission of CO2, and we explained to you that this is the way to do it. Also, World Health Organization said itself that that they want to promote the decrease of PM 2.5, that it is the particulate matters that are causing these diseases. They want to decrease the concentration, and this is the way to do it because, as we said before, as we proved you with the example, using the public transportation would help the environment because more people would use the same means of transportation instead of their private vehicles. No, yes.
Are you aware that here in your resolution you're talking about pollution, while there are richest people who are using air travel for their personal gain, not in the city, and you're actually affecting workers who are poor and have the need, and not the big corporation who actually are polluting more?
Well, we are talking about urban areas, and we said before that we are well aware that this will not solve the problems of all world, but this would help. This would be the first step to do something. So should we just stop and let the world collapse? No, we have to do something. This is a way to do something, and we need to act now, because as we explained in the framing, the situation is critical. So let's talk about the third point, that is the fact that it would improve the situation of traffic jam in the central cities, because some cities are unlivable because there are too many, and this affects citizens' life. And also it would, at the same time, it would preserve the historical parts of the cities, because they are getting ruined by the by many vehicles that circulates in these areas. But by reducing the circulation of vehicles, it would improve the preservation of these historical centers. So for all these reasons that we explained to you with these 3 points, we explained to you why there would be many more benefits in banning the transportation, private vehicles in the urban area. So for all these reasons, we beg you to vote for us. Thank you so much.
8 minutes and 7 seconds.
Thank you. So now I welcome the second speaker of the opposition team, and the floor is yours.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So good morning, my name is Federica. I'm the second speaker of the opposition side, and here we are to explain how we are against the motion that reads every municipality should ban the circulation of private vehicles in at least 30% of its urban areas. I'm going to explain our second and third point, but first I would like to start by confuting some of the points made by the second speaker of the proposition team, and to re-explain the situation here, what we're talking about. So, in the points made by the second speaker, we've seen the health and traffic jams part of the deals, and also maintaining historical center, and so the social and the practical part of banning the 30% of this vehicle of the urban areas. Here they're talking about an ideal world where already in these cities we already have good transportation. We already have not only, as I said, metro, because not all cities have this, but also buses are not completely true. We don't have it. In their plan of action, yes, they talked about giving permissions to people to stay that lives in these blocked areas to use their private vehicles, but they did not talk about how they want to incentivize the production of public vehicles to help these things. We've seen they talked a lot about pollution, and they talked about how also World Health Organization wants to ban
Yes. Are you aware that, as in the framing we said that we want to implement public transportation?
Yes, but when we made our points and talking about how more public transportation would not just equal at the same, if not equal at the same amount of pollution that all these cars made, if not even more, because you talk about this public transportation, about these buses, as they produce the same quantity of a car. Actually, being most heavy and being with more people in it, they actually need more gas than the normal car. So if they will not be the same polluting the atmosphere, it will actually increase. Then you didn't talk a lot in your about plan of action about how implementing this would also affect the workers, because you don't only need the construction of this public transport, but also workers that work on them. So I'm going now to, that's what we are going to explain better in our second and third point. I would like just to remember you our team line, which is the impossibility of an efficient and happy life under the ban, which was what the first speaker just said, the common workers and inability to take public transport, and the third point, which is the revisitation of the public infrastructure and the consequent costs. So I'm now going to explain our second point, which covers the workers that are affected. In fact, as we've seen, the stakeholders are not only the people; they are the people who base their whole life on their private transportation. So the people who lives with their car, who lives in the meaning that they use their car for everything, because maybe they work even on the other side of the city, which is really difficult to go. Or people who, on the other hand, yes?
Are you aware that workers are citizens that would benefit in their health of this ban?
Yes, but sometimes here in our in our society based on capitalism, we're actually seeing people who work for a living. And there are people who would completely shut down if they cannot get to work. And I'm going to get it in this point. We see people who, I was saying, the stakeholders, the one who have private vehicles, the one who completely rely on public vehicles, who would see an enormous amount of people that before could use the private vehicles just to rely on public vehicles. So more people who needs to take transport, and we cannot just put 3 buses on the same exact time, because the time it's not feasible. So there will be one buses that would pass even after half an hour. It would actually compromise the lives of people who already uses buses or transportation before the ban. Then, and the third stakeholders was the municipality and the important costs that it would cause on them. Yes?
Are you aware that in our framing we talked about implement the public transportation?
Yes, but I was saying it's not only about how many buses there are, but it's the fact that there cannot be 3 buses in the same place. It's the importance. The jobs do not change the start of their hours. The job starts at 7, and at 6 all the workers have to take the buses. They cannot take it half an hour late. They need to be there at 6, and if you cannot give 3 buses at the same place for at 6, people will have to go to work late, because the jobs are not connected to the hours of the workers, are the hours of the workers that are connected to their jobs. And I'm going to pass to the schools, because there are children. You're talking about kids who can get their public transportation alone. But what about families? Families who need to, before take their children to the schools that maybe are in the area that are where circulation is banned, and then they have to go to work, which is actually impossible, because the times will be too big and too impossible to. Yes.
Are you aware that primary schools and elementary schools provide buses for the children who live in...
It's actually not true, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but most of the schools do not provide this, because it's usually for family to have at least one private transportation. So I can say, for example, in my city there are no buses for school. There are no, it's actually isolated, and the only mean of transportation is private. So we need to address these changes that will be radical. Then about the strike. If there is a strike, all the city is blocked. There could not be any transportation. We're talking about people who cannot get to work even with the private means, because they could not. They could actually pay a big sum of money just because they want to get to work. Yes?
How private transportation would work better in the occasion of a strike?
It cannot. That's why we cannot ban 30% of urban areas. Then I'm going to briefly talk about our third point, because I've actually already introduced it a lot, because of the revisitation of the public infrastructures and consequent costs. Because as they started to say with their plan of action there would be an implement of buses and public transportation, but this was actually means a radicalization of the city. It would change metro underlines because there are not, so it would actually stop big areas of the city just to make these workers. It would actually increase taxes because there would be an increase of gases needed to make these buses go, or the construction of stations, that the station have to be outside of the ban. So the people would just use the private cars to go to the station, so the pollution would continue. And that's why it's not feasible to eliminate 30% of the urban areas where private vehicles can go. Thank you.
8 minutes and 15 seconds.
Thank you for your speech. Okay, so now I welcome the first speaker of the proposition team, and the floor is yours.
Okay, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, good afternoon, dear judges, dear opposition team, dear spectators and coaches. Today we're here to debate the motion private transportations should be avoided in at least 30% of urban areas. This is decided by every municipality. First of all, I would like to start with some rebuttal of what the opposition team had to say. We think that they really didn't understand correctly the motion, especially in the first speaker. They talked about first urban areas, then vehicles, about the 30%. The 30% is regarding the areas that will be designated, and that is what the motion is saying, so they really have to mind that. Also, private vehicles, the things about bicycles that my teammates already cleared. Yes, they are private transportations, yes, they are dangerous, and yes, they are under the ban, which is something that they really didn't make clear. I will start with the point about isolation that they talked about. They talked about how people will get isolated by this ban, but we're talking about 30% of the town, of the urban areas of the town, and the 30% will be designated by the group of stakeholders that we talked about in our model to be the less impactful, less damaging to the actual citizens. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. It's not just random parts of the areas like your house that would be banned. It's designated parts that have more pedestrians, and that each individual town would have to decide based on their own specific needs. So also isolation is not real, because if you want to get there, you can. People there say you can't get to your friends. Yes, you can. Just you can take a bus, you can either walk. There are many alternatives that are public and they are not private, and they are still valid. Also, there will be more public transportation, as we stated in our model. They are really jumping to conclusions with their affirmations. Also, they are bringing not much evidence into their speeches, whereas we brought you many examples like the World Health Organization, the Agenda 2020 goals, and all 2023 goals, and all the factors about the pollutants and how harmful they are to each and everyone's health, and how this ban would be the first step to the solution of the problem. How do you think of solving an environmental crisis? What would be your suggestion? This is what we can do and what we have to do, because we are getting to a point of not return, and it is very important that we start to act now.
POI?
Yes, please.
Yeah, you talked about pollution and the world, but you are not actually talking about how you're affecting poor people and the people who cannot make big differences.
Yes, I'm talking about pollution and the world because it is one of our arguments. Then I will get to the rebuttal of what your points were. I'm getting to that. Then you talked about how workers would have to stop working because they cannot get to work. First of all, you also stated like cars are more sustainable than buses. You said that the example of the bus was not fitting, and how can you state that way more cars are more sustainable than buses, then that is the whole point of public transportation. How can you state that with no evidence the sustainability of a big and traffic jam is more sustainable than public transportation? That is really an outrageous statement that the opposition team made. Then they talked about how workers would have to stop working, but that is not true, because public transportations would actually be, according to not obstacle too much the work of workers that have to get to work, but also they would be being implemented, so more buses to get to different places on work times, as we stated in our models. Yes, 3 buses can get from one point to another at the same time. If there is no private transportation, there is only public transportation, it's way easier to implement public transportation. Then they talked about how there will be more taxes, more public infrastructures. We have to state clearly that we gave all the municipalities a 1-year time span to be able to implement those changes in the cities. So there is more time, and also there will be an investment that we make to our health. Yes, there are some costs. We do not deny that there will be no costs to this decision. There will be costs. There will be no, thank you. A big investment in people's health, in this save our world situation. The sustainable situation is worth some investments. We do not want to deny that. The investments are worth, and this is because traffic and the pollution from transportation is such a big problem. There needs to be some investment, and this is a very important way that we can make this happen. So we beg you to focus on why this ban would be effective and actually helpful for us. Then I would like to start to go over some of the points that we as a proposition team made, which are the environmental impact, so working to go to a better future according to the Agenda 2023 plans, as we proved you, which said how we would be working also thanks to the World Health Organization to move towards the goals, and how these changes are already starting to happen. Like we gave you examples of what is happening in Turin, that is starting to ban private transportation in specific areas. But yes, it's a start, and we have to implement it with our 30% ban. Then we talked about safety. We talked about how it's really important to focus on how because there are more regulation on public drivers, it would actually reduce accidents on streets and the safety of every citizen that is going around in the town. And is it more likely to get hit by a bus driver or a drunk driver that is going in his own private vehicles? This is a really obvious answer. And then we talked about all the impact it would have on all stakeholders, public health, traffic viability, the preservation of our cities and historical areas. This is something that they not have rebutted at all. So we believe that these points are strong. This is what can help save the 4.3 million deaths caused by air pollution that the World Health Organization is talking about. This is very important to keep in mind, that here we are promoting the values that would help people lives, help the world, and be beneficial to our society. Yes, there are some costs, some expenses that we have to make. It's the duty of every municipality to safeguard its citizen health. And yes, this is one way to do it, and it would be made, as we stated in our model, in the most effective way that they can. So by analyzing what the needs of this territory is, what would be the best ways to implement this change. So for all of these reasons, for the evidence that we brought you, for all these examples that would lead us to a more safe, to a more sustainable, and to a more actually real world, because here we are talking about realistic situations, while they're jumping to conclusion with affirmation that have no evidence, they're not based. We beg you today to vote for proposition team to support our view on the world. Thank you so much for your attention.
3 minutes and 4 seconds.
Thank you so much for your speech.
Can I?
Yes. Now the speech. of the third speaker of the opposition team for the last election.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Hello dear judges, fellow colleagues. I'm the third speaker of the opposition side, and today I'm talking on why our team still strictly rejects the motion that says that every municipality should ban the circulation of private vehicles in at least 30% of their town. Firstly, I would like to start by confuting what the proposition side has said, because the proposition side has proposed that they made their team line on 3 main points, that is environmental impact, the safety of the citizens, and impact of on the health of all the citizens. And they claim that these 3 points are the more important, and what we have said and the data that we brought are unreliable. But they didn't understand one simple thing, that is simple logic. If you take away from the 30% of a town, I don't think they understood that is a really big town, part of a town, and not every town has the infrastructure to have 3 buses at the same time. But at the same time, if you take away traffic jam and you take away all the public transport for the 30% of the town, all that people, that are a lot, are going to need to use that public transportation to go to work, to go to their friends, to go everywhere they need. And thus many people will create an overcrowd on the buses. And an overcrowded buses means more weight, and more weight on the buses means more CO2. That's also more consumed and more buses used. Yes.
So you think you can compare the two things, the private vehicles and the public transportation, in terms of environmental impact?
I'm sorry. Are you aware of the fact that that buses can consume a lot of gas, and more people use them, and more they are overcrowded? You need first more buses, so more gas used, and then if the weight of the bus is more, is also the emission of that. So we actually believe that is comparable by the number of buses that it would need to fit all those people, that it would cause a similarity on the emission of the car. And another thing that is important, and this enormous number of buses maybe can be held by a town, by a big city, but a small town, because I say the motion says every municipality. So every town, we have not to consider only the big capitals, but all the little town, no, rejected, that could not sustain that much buses or that much or that much public transportation. And this also lead directly to our third point, because we said that the public planning wouldn't be sufficient enough in their plan of action to suffice the needs of the population, because if you have to reorganize all the streets, all the bus stops, all the tram stops, if you have to implement those things, 1 year is not enough. And they didn't talk about one really important matter. You can renovate, but first it wouldn't take only 1 year, because you have to revise the entire plan of an entire town. And second, where do you get the money to do so? And because if we had the money, if we always had that money, we should have done it already. But we have not. You maybe are thinking about more rich countries, but not all the countries could provide this your plan of action in the time that you are in the time that you are proposing. Another thing that we talked about is the strikes, and they say that they didn't understand maybe that part, but it's not actually that complicated. If 30% of a town, that is a really big part, even if you say it, even if you choose which part it is and all the citizens knows it, that big part of a town. Yes.
Are you aware that the strike of public transportation are regulated and are protected time for them?
Yes, but you are aware of the fact that the strikes are not regulated with the other works of the town, and this would still block a lot of workers that need to go to work or maybe need to use the public transportation, since they used to have to go through that part of the town, of the city, and they could not. And another thing that they do not have considered, that I would like to address, is the fact that even if you block part of a town, people that have a public transportation and still want to use it will only take longer ways to do so, and thus will produce more emission with the car, because they are not just simply going to renounce to their private transportation. Another thing that we talked about is about bicycle and other type of vehicles of that way that do not cause emission. And they said yes, they do not cause emission, but in overcrowded places they still could cause harm. The only factor that is important is the bicycle for law have to go through the streets. But if the streets are free because there is no private transport like cars, how these incidents are going to become more frequent? And more important, as I already said, 20% of the town is really a lot, and would complicate a lot of people, life. Let me be clear on one thing. We are not saying that the pollution and the situation at disease is perfect. We are not saying that we do not have to do something about car pollution. But we say that a permanent ban, because the motion talks about permanent ban, is too much and is too difficult to apply and cannot his beneficial and this benefit wouldn't be so much greater than just using ZTL or other areas that are already being implemented without actually causing so much trouble to the citizen. Now I would like to take back and talk about my team line, because we have talked about impossibility and efficiency and the happy life in a city, and the common works and the inability to take public transport. And as I already said, by confuting what the other team has said, I already explained why this situation would be unbearable for the most of the people. Because think about it, if you block 30% of the city, a really big part of it, and there is a strike, or there is no place on the bus, or there is no place in the 5 bus that you might have in a bigger city, but in a small town would be impossible to have, and the tram is not working because of problems. Because there could be a lot of things, because public transport, as it is right now, is not efficient, and that's the truth, and nobody in the proposition side has addressed it. And in only 1 year, it wouldn't be enough to do something, because let's watch an example, the capital of Italy, and the Metro C that is 15 years that is being constructed, but nobody is doing something, and you think that 1 year is enough to adapt a city? I don't think so. But anyway, to talk back to the point, it's impossible to have this motion applied to all the towns. It's impossible. It would be, and the benefit would not surpass the damaging side on the life of the poor, of the poor people and the people that need to work every day. This was my speech. Thank you.
8 and 14.
Thank you for your speech. It's now the turn of the final replies, so it's the turn of the opposition team to make its reply.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So, good morning again. I would like to thank both judges and the proposition team. It was an amazing debate. We've seen in this debate 2 completely different points of view. The ones of the proposition side, who wanted to ban 30% of the urban areas to private vehicles, while the opposition side explaining in various points how it's not feasible and how 30% is actually something that is outside of our possibilities right now. So I would like to start by highlighting the points of clash in this debate. I think we can all agree the main point of clash right now was the impact that it had on the person. The proposition side talked a lot about the health, bringing even facts. They talked about general pollution, not really urban pollution, while we talked about the impact on real life people and on workers. The other part was, in fact, planning that they explain in their plan of action, and we, on the other hand, explain during our points our ideas of why it's not feasible a one-year plan to make all these changes. So I'm now going to briefly recap what has just been we have been saying in this debate. So the main point of the proposition team were environment, safety, and the impact on the population. As we said, the main impact was health. That we explained that we agree with the idea of pollution that is harmful for the people, but we've also explained that here we are talking about making poor people pay for this pollution that it actually causes not only by urban areas, and we've talked about that during the whole debate. While we, in our first point, we talked about life and how both for workers and for free time it could be actually impossible with 30% of the area blocked. They talked about also the impact, while talking, yes, about the historical center. They didn't really make the point of all the cities that do not have an historical center, maybe because they're more new or they simply do not have it. Well, we talked in general, we talked about both the big cities and the small towns, and we've explained how it's not feasible, not only because of the workers, but actually it would actually not be feasible for the planification of these things. They talked about a one-year plan to implement all these changes, both for having more buses or tubes that would help transport, but we proved even with examples that everyone knows, like in Rome and the Metro C, that even 5 years are not enough, so 1 year would actually not be feasible. We've explained how it would actually be impossible to implement all these changes at all, even if a one-year plan, and we've explained, as the other proposition tried to talk about the 30% as it was a small population, how in our world even 30% would actually be a big problem. So even if the minor part of the ban is actually true, it would actually be a catastrophe. So we have two words. Our word with it's a realistic word, and their word in ideal where everything already works, and now we just want to implement things. So thank you, and thank the proposition set too. This was my speech.
4 minutes and 18 seconds.
Thank you for your speech. Okay, so now we can finish and conclude with the reply of the proposition team.
Okay, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1, go. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and dear judges. We have come to the end of today's debate, and I'm here to show you what the outcome of today's debate actually is. Let's go through the main clashes that were debated today. we have public transportation, the impact on citizens, and the health of citizens. Let's start with the first one, public transportation. We believe that the definition of public transportation were misunderstood by the opposition team, because they said that with the public transportation there would be more isolation, and the public transportation would pollute more. But the proposition team proved you with many examples and with logical reasoning that public transportation would actually reduce the impact of the emission in the environment, and that there will be many different means of public transportation, so that they can cover the population of a town or a city. Then we can move to the second clash, that was the impact of citizens, because the opposition team thinks that this ban would damage the stakeholders, the citizens, but the proposition team believes that the benefits that this ban would cause are way bigger and they're way more important than the damages that they're talking about. First of all, because they only focused on workers. They only focused on that, and they totally exaggerated what we were talking about. Because when we talk about the 30% of the urban areas, that doesn't mean that all the workers cannot go to school. So they totally exaggerated that. And we talked about banning vehicles in at least 30% of the urban areas, and we also explained that we would implement the means of transportation, because obviously we need more. And whereas we talked about the benefits to the stakeholders, and we proved you that there are many more benefits, that there would be many more benefits, because the banning of the circulation of private vehicles in at least 30% of the urban areas would actually help with the environment, and would actually assure the citizens' health. It would make their life better, as we proved you with the point of the traffic jams, and with the point of the preservation of historical centers. Then we talked about health, that it is one of the main clash, but the other team did not address this point, that it was actually crucial to our debate, because we proved you with many examples from scientific divulgation, as we explained, that the damages that the air polluting is having on citizens is really harmful and need to be solved. So we have two worlds. Their world, where they live in total ignorance, because they've been saying that public transportation would pollute more than private transportation, and they live in an environment they live in a world where they don't care about the environment, they don't care about citizens' health, and they don't care about their safety. Whereas we live in a world, we have a world where it is realistic. We stand with the idea that we live in an environmental crisis and we need to start doing something now. And in our world, we want to improve our citizens' life, and in every aspect possible, as we proved you with arguments and many examples. So, for all these reasons, dear judges, we ask you this question: in which world would you want to live in? Theirs or ours? I would bet that the answer is pretty easy. So for this reason, we beg you to vote for us. Thank you.
3 minutes and 58 seconds.
Thank you for your speech. Okay, so now the debate is closed. I invite you to clap your hands.